Wait, that's not how it happened. Is it? If you clicked on this video, you're probably familiar with 1999's Batman Beyond. The at the time new Batman, Terry McGinnis, was following in the footsteps of his critically acclaimed animated predecessor, with Terry's TV show spawning from a loophole in a Kids WB regime change request for a teenage Batman cartoon, part of a new no adults direction for the network, under the assumption that kids just want to watch other kids. After a very successful first season, Batman Beyond was already in production on its second when Warner Home Video approached Bruce Timm and his team for a Beyond feature film, and they were delighted to oblige. But as history will tell, the outcome of this production, the metaphorical giant snowball at the bottom of the hill, resulted in two very different versions of the movie Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker, Censored and Uncut. But why? What caused the movie to be censored and have so many alterations made? Well, I'll just tell you now, it's not what you might think, because it wasn't what we thought, and we're us. So let's take a look at just how and why Return of the Joker was split in two, delayed for months, and in the end, killed the DC Animated Universe's presence on Kids WB. It's funny, there's a bit on the audio commentary for the first Batman Beyond episode where Bruce Timm talks about how silly it is to see such big brick phones in this show that's supposed to be set in like the late 2030s, how they couldn't have predicted phones would just get smaller and smaller. But I'm personally pretty dang happy that Batman Beyond seems to have gotten it right, because my inner 90s child is so overjoyed getting to play games on a phone like the one that brought you this video, the RedMagic 9 Pro. When we first heard about this thing, my initial thought was like, it's a phone. I have one of those, but this thing is the closest to an actual pocket-sized computer that I've ever experienced. It has up to 16 gigabytes of RAM, a little baby cooling fan that lights up all neat-like, and is equipped with a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor, which I've never heard of, but my wife's dad works for an electrical distribution company, and he was like, holy crap, that's a nice chip. And speaking of my wife, she's always playing games on her phone, so I gave her this thing to try out for a while, and now I can't get it back. It's hers now. This phone is fast, the screen is big and bright, her games boot up and run in seconds with zero issues, and the battery life, oh my god. It took half an hour to charge, she didn't plug it in again all week, and it had barely dropped past 80%.
It also has an internal power source, or didn't you notice?
The RedMagic 9 Pro does everything you need a smartphone to do, including a camera worthy of the Bat computer's enormous resolution, but it also has this mode called Game Space you can flip into, which keeps track of your scores, playtime, and other stats, and organizes all your games into a nice little hub so you don't ever have to go tracking down the apps on your boring normie home screen. There are seriously like 20 other really cool things about this phone: the display, the speakers, the shoulder triggers. I just don't have the time. We're inside a video about the Joker, but this is no laughing matter, folks! So if you love mobile gaming and you want a truly impressive upgrade from whatever clunky mess you're using right now, go check out the RedMagic 9 Pro at the link below. The chill that never quits, it says. It says that right there on their website. It's too bad this video isn't about Mr. Freeze! Thank you so much to RedMagic for sponsoring this video, and now let's get into it. On the wall of my office hangs an original copy of the Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker poster, coming exclusively to video and DVD October 31st, 2000, which is odd considering the movie actually released on December 12th that year. Now, full disclosure, I was 9 at the time. I barely knew the movie existed at all. Heck, as a dial-up internet using literal child, I was so removed from pop culture news that when I created my first little HTML Justice League fan site, I included a clickable Easter egg that would lead you to a sneak preview clip from the Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero movie that had already been out for like 4 years. What a stupid little kid. Suffice to say, when Return of the Joker first released, I rented that sucker as soon as I heard about it, and I'm sure I wore out the tape and my parents' wallets, renting and watching it endlessly. But that was just the thing. We, the target audience babies, had no idea this wasn't the movie. Like, here's a Batman Beyond movie. Wow, so cool. I have no reason to believe anything weird about this. I love Batman. But before long, like within days, rumor began to spread online that a bigger, longer, uncut version of Return of the Joker, featuring more violence, more adult content, and a completely different death scene for the Joker, was out there, like a way ahead of its time Snyder Cut. Is it real? Have some already seen it? Will it ever be released? Meanwhile, bootleg copies of it began to mysteriously circulate around the DCAU fanbase like the tape from The Ring, but with decidedly fewer unexplained deaths. And, in what seemed like the blink of an eye when I think back on it, we found ourselves in April 2002, amid the airing of the Justice League cartoon's first season. as Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, parenthesis, the original uncut version, closed parenthesis, popped into existence exclusively on DVD. And yet, I distinctly remember renting and eventually begging my mommy to purchase a VHS copy here at this very video store, today one of the last in the country. I'm here with Neil, owner and operator of Video Horizons since its opening in 1984. Neil, what can you tell me about the bootleg copy of the Batman Beyond movie you had here roughly 20 years ago?
Bootleg copy? Yeah, I don't have bootleg copies. I don't know what you're talking about.
The owner, Neil, declined to comment. So why did this happen? What caused this heavy re-editing of Return of the Joker? Well, for as long as I can remember, I and everyone else I know have been under the impression that it was due to a then recent national tragedy, the Columbine High School Massacre, one of the most infamous school shootings in American history. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, don't worry, but for the sake of those not in the know, Columbine was attacked in 1999 by students who had been heavily immersed in violent video games prior to turning to real weapons, which sparked a nationwide discussion and at times panic, drawing a thin and emotionally charged causality between violence in media and violence in real life, aka playing games like Grand Theft Auto or Mortal Kombat, or seeing their favorite superhero kicking just a little too much ass on TV could influence kids to be copycats and bring that violence into the world.
Come on, Tare. If it was dangerous, you think they'd let kids do it?
As a reaction to the tragic event, folks in positions of political or social power sought to dramatically reduce violence in media intended for children and young adults, and the DC animated universe was by far not immune to this. In fact, we talked heavily about this in our video about the creation of the Zeta Project, where the government murder robot wasn't allowed to use guns, and even Batman Beyond itself became a brighter, less grotesque show midway through its lifespan. Every time I've been asked why Return of the Joker got censored, this has been my answer. Why was every death by gun in the movie changed? Columbine. Why was every instance of blood digitally removed? Columbine. Why were seatbelts added to the Batmobile? Columbine, I guess. Even the DCAU wiki says, following the Columbine High School Massacre, the film received edits and alterations that delayed its release. Except, that's not what happened. Well, not exactly.
I've been thinking about something you once told me, and you were wrong.
It wasn't just a school shooting that caused the movie to backfire, excuse my levity, but more so, in fact, because of Kids WB themselves. Even more specifically, a particular person near the top of the food chain. For their sake, and those of the multiple DCAU crew members I was able to speak with about this, they shall remain nameless. But for ease of illustration, let's just call this person, John McKids WB. No, that's bad. John McKids? Even worse. Jeez. Okay, Derek. It's Derek. That way I can use this guy as a stand-in and you won't take any glowy green umbrage. I should probably clarify, though, I'm not talking about Sean Catherine Derek, the original story editor for BTAS. The Derek Powers bit was just too good not to pass up. You get it.
Batman.
Return of the Joker was an event from the very beginning. With such masterpieces at their backs as Batman Mask of the Phantasm or the world's finest Batman-Superman crossover, Timm and company knew they needed to deliver something big. Not a one-off bad guy, not a plot that could conceivably be an episode of the cartoon. This had to be special.
My comeback party's gonna set the whole town on fire!
The movie also naturally meant a lot to them. It was a chance to finally bridge the new Batman show with the old, tell a feature-scale story in the Beyond world, and hey, this was their baby to begin with, their original character and world, perhaps their biggest contribution to the Batman mythos, give or take a Harley Quinn here and there. The movie gave them the opportunity to perfect their Joker character design after the fanbase fallout from his look in the new Batman adventures, and truly make him as terrifying as they'd always wanted. They brought in a live orchestra for the first time in years. They had background designer Ted Blackman and storyboard artist Ronnie Del Carmen back from the BTAS days. And due to their usual go-to overseas animation studio, Coco Enterprises, being busy enough with the Beyond animated series, the crew even had the opportunity to have the movie animated by an old favorite, Tokyo Movie Shinsha, or TMS. Except for these handful of scenes that Coco did do, which I know because I've seen a lot of shops and I can tell by the pixels. This included work by Hiroyuki Aoyama, who animated the famously impressive Clayface scenes in Feet of Clay, and several memorable sequences in a major DCAU influence, the 1988 Japanese motion picture Akira, the stage was set for a phenomenal film. After over 2 years of work, Return of the Joker was complete, and, as the story goes, was shown in a beloved screening room on the Warner Brothers lot. The cast, the writers, the director, the producers, the composers, friends, family, and WB top brass all packed in one room. When the end credits began rolling, there was thunderous applause. Everyone was immensely proud. Everyone except Derek, who had, unknown to the crew, apparently stormed out before the film was even over, furious at how dark and disturbing everything was.
Burn this.
I'm sorry?
This must never be seen.
Now, typically, as in the case of Mask of the Phantasm, the DCAU films could get away with a lot more violence and adult themes than on broadcast TV, but it seemed Return of the Joker had gone too far. With Phantasm, writer Paul Dini had told the Wild Cartoon Kingdom magazine years earlier,
"The edict from the higher-ups at Warner Brothers was to make a Batman movie that a parent would feel good about renting for their kid. Something that's not going to be grotesque and offensive."
Likely in response to that film's Bat predecessor, Batman Returns, which had received backlash from parents for its ad campaigns and McDonald's Happy Meal toys that urged kids to go see a movie containing stuff like this, or this. But at least with Phantasm, WB had made themselves clear from the beginning, and we were years removed from this by then. In fact, the Beyond crew had already scrapped a scene to cut down on time that definitely would have drawn this type of attention, where Bruce Wayne finds Joker's corpse hanging in the ruins of Arkham Asylum. But here Derek was, at the 11th hour, or really the 12th hour, we're gonna need a bigger doomsday clock, demanding that Return of the Joker be kidified, toned down, and several scenes completely reanimated, or else Kids WB would not promote or air the film on their TV channel. At the time, Ain't It Cool News had received a tip that Warner Home Video executives were blown away by the accomplishments of the creative team. The WB Network execs, however, had a different reaction. "This is way too violent. We can never broadcast anything like this." Obviously, this was a big deal. Besides, in print, the primary way that kids, or really any age group, were going to hear about the movie's existence was on TV. We didn't have the likes of YouTube for trailer premieres, or Instagram for promoted posters and screenshots, or Facebook for Grandpa to send a link I probably shouldn't even think about clicking on. So for the network that Batman Beyond aired on every week to not promote its upcoming movie would essentially be a death sentence. This was no empty threat. A source connected with DVD distribution at Warner Brothers told Ain't It Cool that to them, the film being re-edited was a supreme disappointment, that in a positive way for the evolution of Batman on screen, Return of the Joker was a horrific piece of animation where Joker goes too far. This is not a movie I would market to children. Paul Dini and company have finally realized the Joker as he was meant to be, a fearsome monster who has the gall to smile and giggle as he tortures you. The film cleverly leads you down one road, then diverts you down another. This is as good an effort as Mask of the Phantasm. This film will make you believe Terry McGinnis is Batman. After this movie, he earns the title, as far as I'm concerned.
New Gotham, new rules, even a new Batman.
It was clear that even internally, the WB Network's reaction was not being handled well. Soon, Derek and co. at Kids WB had sat down with the team and punched holes in the script beat by beat. Their notes were vast, and their objections, while unfortunately understandable, were incredibly untimely and frustrating for all involved. Nevertheless, work began on the censored cut of Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. Now, you may be screaming, "Well, of course Derek was concerned with the violence, because of Columbine, James, you stupid little kid!" But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. I promise it gets worse. Hey, it's the super fast giveaway segment. If this is you, you won this stuff on screen. Congrats! We've left a reply to your original comment, so go check that out to see what to do next. And if it's not literally a reply from this account with the check mark and everything, it's not us. Do not engage. Next up is all this stuff, and it can be yours if you leave a comment answering our question of the day from the end of this video. It's that easy. Come back next time to find out if you won. Okay, back to the video. Return of the Joker's censored version contained a handful of debatably digestible changes, such as this sequence of shots where Jordan Price expects to find his lustful girlfriend in his bed, and we get a rather gratuitous booty shot of one of the Didi twins. That's just completely gone, and we jump into the scene rather abruptly instead. The aforementioned bat seatbelts, while perhaps the silliest of changes, at least, I suppose, urge children to buckle up if they are ever pursued by a giant space laser. The majority of cuts come in the form of the removal of violence, or at least its implication, and while it'd be impossible to take out every fight scene, Bruce Timm and his crew were able to be selective enough with removing individual punches or kicks or bites. There's a Great Dane and a crazy hyena boy in the movie, okay? Bruce Wayne practicing with a batarang deletes a shot where a Two-Face mannequin gets its head chopped off. The fight at the dance club cuts a shot short where we now don't see Dana getting yanked back by her hair. Joker's spray paint in the Batcave is color corrected from red to purple to seem less like blood. The lights are off in every building that the space laser blows up. Don't worry, kids, there's nobody in there. And perhaps to me, the most painful removal is this 360 action beat of Terry versus the Jokers, which thematically calls back to a similar shot from the show's opening title sequence. Did you know these were just action figures on a turntable in Bruce Timm's kitchen? The film's dialogue wasn't safe from the proverbial chopping block either, with several minor and arguably pedantic rewrites causing the actors to have to return to the studio to dub over even parts of sentences.
What about it, kid? Any last words for the old bat fart? Any last words for the old bat coot?
While those bunglers tried to kill Wayne.
While those bunglers tried to ice Wayne.
Because I want you to see every minute of this. It's a killer. It's a doozy.
Yeah, those are real necessary changes there, Derek. Very worthy of everyone's time, I'm sure.
Ah, brave new world that has such yatzes in it.
The notable death of gang member Bonk was even changed from being blasted across the room by a deadly dart from Joker's bang gun to being lethally laughing gassed, and still somehow propelled just as far. And the Untouchables style scene that followed, where Joker makes the gang repeatedly promise, "We're with you," while Bonk rots in the corner, was also just tossed to the cutting room floor for being disturbing as hell.
Oh, right. Dead.
But the biggest and most infamous changes, of course, come in the film's memorable flashback sequence, where we rewind time to the days of the modern-day Batman and witness the Joker's capture and torture of Robin, as well as his own demise. A pair of sex workers are replaced with a different couple of background extras. And no, that's not Black Canary, watch our Birds of Prey video. And yes, that is Marty LeBeau, the dude who drove off with Rudy Jones standing precariously in the bed of his pickup as ooey gooey purple stuff melted him into the parasite. At least Marty found love, so that's nice. When Batman sees what Joker's done to Tim Drake, he cuts himself loose from a trap with a pocket knife, then throws that knife at the Joker. In the censored cut, the shot ends before the knife is thrown, but the tear in the curtain behind Joker can still be seen. Joker's film reel projected in the operating theater contains several changes to unsettling dialogue, such as,
I'll begin with how I peeled back the layers of the boy's mind.
Becoming,
I'll begin with how I affected young Robin's makeover.
And the shots of him electrocuting Robin are 100% gone. Any blood dripping down anyone's chin is cleared away, and instead of Joker misdirecting Batman in order to stab him in the leg, we instead get a corny punch sound effect and an awkward cut that tells us, he smacked him really hard, I guess. Then finally, we have the Joker's death scene. Rather than any small tweaks or edits, this sequence is changed completely from the ground up. The original unaltered film depicts Tim pushing through the Joker's hold on his mind just long enough to aim the gun at Joker himself and pull the trigger, sending the clown prince of crime flying back into an oversized building block where he sputters,
"That's not funny. That's not,"
and drops dead. In the censored version, we instead get Tim tossing the gun aside and shoving the Joker back behind the curtain where the torture took place, sending him crashing into a tank of water, drenching him and causing him to slip on the floor, catch himself on the lever, and two very different, yet still very haunting scenes.
Why do we even have that lever?
Even the comic book adaptation, which hit shops 2 months after the movie, fell prey to the censorship. Writer Darren Vincenzo and artist Craig Rousseau had already been working on the comic for months, based on faxed over scripts and storyboards, so Rousseau had already drawn the original Joker death scene when the decision came down to censor the movie, and so had to go back and change it to the new scene instead. All the edits were a nightmare for music composer Christopher Carter as well, having to, as seamlessly seamlessly as he could, edit the already recorded and mastered orchestra tracks around any removed shots or reanimated sequences. Truly an unimaginable headache. He talked about this as recently as his appearance on the Justice League Revisited podcast, which I was also just on. Go listen to it, it's good! But roughly a month before the film's pushed release date in December 2000, the changes had all been completed. TMS had managed to, in an extremely tight turnaround, redo the majority of the necessary animation changes, with in-house WB animators handling this specific shot of Batgirl. It was all hands on deck, but they made it happen, and the censored cut was shown to the network execs for final approval. The film had come a long way, and had driven plenty of folks to the edge of becoming Joker Juniors themselves, but at last, it was done. Oh, did I not mention? Oh, I'm sorry, that's my bad. Derek still didn't air the movie. Over the years, I've repeatedly read just how much everyone who worked on Return of the Joker is still so proud of this film today. It really does hold its own with Mask of the Phantasm as one of the best Batman stories put to screen. And just like that BTAS film, Warner Brothers simply did not market the thing. For different reasons, under different leadership, sure, but still. Phantasm opened to purely matinee screenings in only 1,500 theaters, and therefore was a textbook box office bomb. That film's crew felt it wasn't treated like a real movie, and with how extremely disheartening the experience was on Return of the Joker, I can only presume they felt the same there. I certainly would, with history repeating itself so eerily.
Come on, it's just entertainment.
You wouldn't find it so entertaining if you were on the receiving end.
Similar to Phantasm's single short-run trailer, you may remember this one for the Beyond movie, spelling out the word Batman, which found its way onto various VHS home releases. After Return of the Joker had already been out for weeks, it got a couple other trailers, like this one that mislabels Ghoul as Scarecrow, and of course this poster was along for the ride too. But that was pretty much it. Around a year later, Paul Dini reflected that
they were saying, commercials, what the hell, we're gonna put one here and there, we're gonna do an MTV video, we're gonna do this and that, we're gonna have a huge opening. In the end, everyone got scared and it did poorly. I think it's unfortunate that everyone got scared and ran away from it. If I turned in the script and they said, it's a little too extreme here, you can't have a kid shooting a villain, I would have listened to it at the time, but when it happened at the 11th hour, and then we had to go in and change it, it wasn't doing anyone any favors. It wasn't promoted, it kind of leaked out on the shelves, and it was not what anybody wanted. There was a big overreaction.
You may even recall the trailers boasting,
the first feature-length Batman Beyond movie.
Yeah, right. I'm your only
Batman Beyond movie.
As we've talked about in another video you should absolutely watch, there was going to be a sequel that never happened, much of which became the plot of the JLU episode Epilogue, hashtag keep Epilogue a secret, because of Return of the Joker's poor performance. And all thanks to Derek.
Can't be too careful with all those weirdos around.
To be fair, the network hadn't always been a problem. Gene McCurdy, former president of Warner Brothers Animation, had hired Tim and Dini in the first place and was one of their major cheerleaders. Margaret Loesch, then president and CEO of Fox Kids, had backed up the DCAU team time and again during the BTAS days. Even Kids WB in general had been great at first.
Gene McCurdy, who we miss most of all because she was the one who really kept the place going. She was very visionary as far as assigning people to shows that she thought they could really make a positive contribution to.
The writing was already on the wall for Static Shock and Zeta Project when Bruce Timm and James Tucker put together their test animation for Justice League, which included teenage sidekicks galore, and which you can see in HD right here on this very YouTube channel. But when Cartoon Network offered to let them do pretty much whatever they wanted, kid characters or no kid characters, the boys scrapped that idea and produced JL for them instead.
Not to worry, I have a permit. This just says I can do what I want.
The team was past Return of the Joker's failure, on to bigger and better things, with a network that would back up their every move and open the floodgates for some of the best stories the DCAU has to offer. But fan outcries and petitions to get the original Uncut Beyond movie released began to catch WB's attention. In this pre-social media world, the way to get the word out about your dissatisfaction was to literally just complain about it everywhere you went. The comic shop, the movie theater, the bar, the post office, the bathroom stall, graffiti, anywhere. The original intact movie had already been delivered to video stores around the country as screener copies, as was commonplace back in the good old days, so the bootleg and share it with a friend train was already a chugging along.
Yeah, James, it was a screener copy, you jackass.
And soon tons of fans had seen the version of Return of the Joker that was meant to be seen, whether WB wanted them to or not.
Well, at least I've got the evidence.
Even comic author Derek Friedolfs, a different Derek that isn't radioactive, reminisced about this period of time on his blog, remarking how he was able to get that store copy to see it, and it just burned into my mind how well written and composed it was. He would go on to write a scene for Justice League Beyond that directly referenced the Joker's death by gun, so we know where his heart cannon lies.
We are so in sync, we're finishing each other.
Derek!
Folks on online message boards were secretly distributing copies. There were several fan-spearheaded attempts to get the word out. People were writing letters and calling Warner Brothers, asking millions of questions and making their feelings known, with some campaigns even pushing for the censored version to be released as Return of the Joker, but with a secondary release of the unaltered version alternatively titled The Joker Strikes Back, because, hey, we've already got Mark Hamill, why not lean all the way into the Star Wars parallels?
I want my lawyer.
Thousands of fans made their voices heard, and WB must have had dollar signs for eyeballs. They saw there would be an audience who would buy the movie again, a sort of 2 for the price of 1 release. So, they did it. Those beautiful Batcoots did it.
But now I'm tanned, I'm rested, and I'm ready to give this old town a wedgie again.
April 2002, the original uncut version dropped, though rather quietly. It wasn't advertised at all. WB felt more comfortable sort of shadow releasing it and letting whatever money came in, come in. And that was kind of okay. At least the Return of the Joker we were supposed to see was finally being seen. Why it took them over a year to do it? No clue. Maybe the original needed circulation time, maybe Derek stopped caring so much. Your guess is as good as mine. For all my digging, sometimes you just had to be there, and I wasn't. I was attending 5th grade. So if all this is what really happened, then where did the idea come from that Columbine was solely to blame? The earliest morsel I was able to find was from back in October 2001 on the Toon Zone forums. Thank God those are back up now, makes my job so much easier. But there doesn't seem to be any specific official source that ever said at the time, it was Columbine that done did it. In actuality, there was an episode of the TV show that was altered by Columbine's ripple effect, The Last Resort. According to writer Stan Berkowitz, it was written as a response to the shooting, but had to be toned way down from its original gritty prison storyline, and the end result is barely an echo of the intention. I've seen and heard DCAU crew members speculate over the years that Columbine was the catalyst for Return of the Joker's whirlwind of a production, and when you think about it, maybe it at least was the spark for Kids WB's knee-jerk reaction. The same month the initial censored cut was released on VHS and DVD, Ain't It Cool reported leaks from inside WB which posited, is it because of Al Gore's attacks? Perhaps. We'll never know. For those of you who don't know who Al Gore is, he's the Man-Bear-Pig guy. Wait, is that even too old a reference now?
No, it's the children who are wrong.
The making of Return of the Joker is a tale of corporate one-upmanship as old as time itself. And as a film made free from network involvement, it pushed every limit it could and was bound to step on a few sensitive toes. While a masterpiece itself, the film is still, well, brutal as hell, and in hindsight, perhaps a little too much for its intended audience, regardless of any real-world events of the time. But in the perfect storm, it seems, had Derek not been metaphorically running the Wayne Powers Corporation, none of this would have happened. Ironically, it's pretty dang hard to find a copy of the censored cut today. If you buy ROTJ online or in the store, it's almost certainly going to be the uncut version. Even the Batman Beyond full series Blu-ray box set has only that cut. It seems the only way you can watch the Joker die by electrocution these days is if you nab the double feature Return of the Joker and Mystery of the Batwoman DVD, which has the censored cut despite nothing on the packaging telling you so. It's honestly a bit disappointing that we don't have an HD re-release of the censored cut of the movie, since, like I said up top, it was the movie for a couple years. It's like WB wants you to forget the incorrect version ever happened. Like, what? Pff, we never did that. What are you talking about? Further disappointment comes in that the retakes of shots throughout the film had actually allowed the producers the chance to correct some mistakes or redo stuff they weren't entirely pleased with. In Bonk's death scene, WB had asked long before the censorship that they remove Bonk's twitching dead body from the foreground of this shot, so in the censored, they were able to add him back in, laughing on the tabletop, fixing an otherwise empty feeling frame. The infamous seat belts made him go, oh, whoops, the pilot's chair wasn't even in this shot at all, and now it is. Or, arguably, an upgrade from having Nana Harley be dressed in generic old lady clothes to now being more obviously old Harley Quinn. Paul Dini told Ain't It Cool he was still pleased with the results despite the changes, that the film still worked on a fundamental story level, and that part of him even wished they'd written it that way from the beginning. Funny enough, we've heard a few times in the comments on our videos that there was some sort of third version of the film that people remember seeing, which combined elements of both censored and uncut. I always figured you all were Mandela affecting yourselves, but lo and behold, after some archival digging, I discovered that when the movie was shown on TV for the first time on August 9th, 2002, it was the censored cut, but with the uncensored flashback. Why? Who knows? But if you've got a copy taped off TV or something, I'd love to see it. Like a weird Frankenstein version of Return of the Joker is almost befitting. Regardless of all its problems, Batman Beyond Return of the Joker is still an amazing piece of art. Some of my favorite animation in the entire DCAU is in this movie. I had to watch the whole thing multiple times to make this video, and I already want to watch it again. It's just so good, but I think I want to plug in the old VCR and pop in the tape this time. Be 9 years old again. Who am I kidding? This YouTube channel proves I'm gonna be 9 years old forever. A 9-year-old with a 75-year-old's back. And what I've always found funniest about it all is that despite everything Kids WB threw their way, the creative team still managed to make Batman Beyond the darkest, most adult entry in the DC animated universe. Because that's all us kids actually want to see. A good story.
Fans will probably have even more questions after they've seen this.
So. Oh, sure. Yeah. God, I love our fans.
Yep.
Really into the show.
Yeah. God bless them.
Of course, they're going to be mad that we didn't explain what happened to Nightwing. They'll say, what, one little line? That's all? That's all you're going to give us?
For my question of the day, which version of Return of the Joker do you consider canon? I think there's some strong arguments on both sides for which Joker death is better. Like, I get that the Uncut is a tougher moment for Tim, but Joker dying twice by electricity is pretty poetic, I think. Plus, come on, the dude basically slips on a banana peel. Comedy gold! Thanks again to RedMagic for sponsoring. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. I'm gonna wind up showing Brian this movie twice for the podcast, and I have no regrets.
Derek.